Hello everyone, CJ Miller from Through These Four Eyes. Bay City is blessed to have many beautiful historic buildings throughout the city limits, many of which are in the Historic National Registry. The one standing behind me, the Masonic Temple, has been around since the late 1800s. We have a very special guest joining us today, Eric Jylha. Many of you may know Eric as the former meteorologist of TV5. Since his retirement 5 years ago, Eric has become sort of a local historian of Bay City. Eric has been gracious enough to take us on a tour of the temple. We'll be exploring all 4 floors, and while we're doing that, he's going to be giving us a history of the temple. So, right now, let us welcome Eric Jylha.
Well, welcome to the Historic Masonic Temple in Bay City. Site of Masonic activity for a number of years. They started in our community as Bay City was growing to its eventual population of over 50,000 people. They kind of decided that fraternal organizations were a great way for men to meet other men. So there was there's the kind of the feeling that this was only the upper crust that belonged to this Masonic organization here, but it was a real cross-section of our community. And it goes back to 1858 when the idea of uniting and getting a charter was agreed upon, and eventually they built this magnificent building, and there were 12 different lodges that were located here. So this is the hallway, the main doors that open up onto Madison Avenue. This building was constructed for everyone to use back as far as 1897, and then it burned. After 10 years it burned in May and was totally destroyed and rebuilt. So this is the rebuilt lodge, but it matches the original. They used the same plan, and you'll see that as we go through the building. So I think the interesting thing about this entryway is with 12 lodges and different organizations using this building, they could all use it simultaneously, and by closing off doors in certain configurations, they could steer the crowd into the different rooms that we'll show you. So there could be simultaneous things going on in this building. And indeed, that's what happened during the fire. It had been a busy day, about 6 o'clock in the evening. They were leaving the building and closing up, and they started seeing smoke coming out from the Blue Room stage. And the building had been hit by lightning during a thunderstorm, and that's what sparked the fire. So come on in and we'll take a look around. This is the lobby way that enters into most of the main rooms after you come through the Madison Street door. And this was the Blue Room. This was their main room, but it was a private room, so only the members that were taking the classes, in a sense, which were called degrees, were allowed to go inside, and they would get in by using the door knocker. And there were things that would be said back and forth that gave them permission then to enter the Blue Room. This is the biggest room in Bay City. It's 3 stories high. This is the Blue Room. This is their main room. And when it was restored in the, around the 1970s, it was repainted, especially the proscenium arch here. The color blue in this building is significant because it's the color of King Solomon's Temple, which was where the original Knights Templar were given a location to have this as their headquarters way back after the Crusades. So this is the Blue Room. Right now the stained glass windows have their covers on it because we were using it and keeping the room dark. We show movies in here. We have concerts. These seats actually were once at Crossroads Village, and there was a swap done with their theater, I think, where they wanted the wooden seats that were originally here, and they were swapped for their seats, which were used here. So this building seats about this room of over 300 people, and they would have these degrees here. There's a full stage. Right now the flies are not on it, they've been stored, but there were 29 theatrical hand-painted drops that were on flies up into a full rigged theater, and by manipulating those flies they could pretty much make an astonishing array of effects. And those were parts of the degrees that basically were teaching men ethical, and I'm not a Mason, so I can't speak for the Masons, but I look at it as men wanted to be civilized and do good things in their community and make friends, and that's what this lodge served the purpose as. And so those degrees or classes would be held in this room, and that's why you hear like a 32nd degree Mason. He's had 32nd degrees here. The only ones that were public, I think, were Christmas and a patriotic one around the 4th of July where other family members could attend. But other than that, the degrees were private and meant for the Masons only. And so most of them would be done in this room with these theatrical drops. The corresponding building next to us, the consistory, which is the Scottish Rite Masons. This is York Rite in this building. The Scottish Rite would actually have actors on stage to portray the lessons that they wanted to do. Part of the asset of this building is this fabulous organ made by the Feldgemacher Company. Feldgemacher was a major organ maker in Erie, Pennsylvania, which was a hot spot for making pipe organs. On the outside here, you see these blue pipes. They're sheerly decorative. The pipe box there actually has square wooden pipes in it. These were just decorative and on the front and were originally wood. They were painted later on. Now, I've got to tell you a funny story. When we first obtained this building, I was very interested in the organ. And so I was searching for who the manufacturer was, and there was a little plastic label on the organ console up here. And I looked into it, and I tried, it had a company, and I Googled it, and it was the manufacturer of the little plastic label. It was not the manufacturer of the organ. But we eventually found a receipt, and this was a Feldgemacher organ. We then tried to find the Feldgemacher company, found out that over time they had merged with the Teller Tracker organs and became part of another company. But lo and behold, Feldgemacher's granddaughter was still alive, and in a plastic box under her bed, she had the company records of selling this organ to the Masonic Lodge. Now, the organ burned in the fire. So the question was the second organ built specifically for this building, or did they buy a used one and move it here? And we have determined that this was original to the second construction. It was built for this building. They bought an option with it, and in the attic there's a blower that drives the wind. So there's a switch, you turn the blower on. Right now all kinds of notes sound. So the plan here is we will eventually train a group. This has been used at other organs like this. We bring in these experts, we'll disassemble the pipe box because it has a mechanism all under the floor here. The organ console and the pipe box are connected by linkages, and some of them are disconnected over the years. We also can't get back to the back of the organ because you see it in white there, that wall was put in to kind of differentiate between the seats and the steps and the organ. But right now we can't open up the back of the organ to reconnect it. So that will eventually happen, and we'll have volunteers that will rebuild the mechanism. Each key, there's maybe 8 parts that are felt that seal air off, and these will all have to be rebuilt. So the plan is to deconstruct the organ with these experts, bring everything out here on the floor, and volunteers chain assembly line process will rebuild what happens when you press a key, and that will all be reinstalled, and then this organ will work. Now, another question that came up is, can contemporary instruments tune to the organ and play here? And Leo Najar, the late Leo Najar, who was the music maestro, of course, of the Bijou Orchestra here in Bay City, along with other things, Leo said this organ would actually be a civic organ, and it would be slightly higher pitch than a traditional instrument. So it's difficult to tune instruments to match this organ. But he said it can be done. And there was music written for a civic organ and a small orchestra like the Bijou, like 13, 16 pieces. And so at some point, we hope to have the organ and then have it in a concert with this group of instruments that could be tuned to the organ. But it would be hard to bring in like a say like a high school band with all their instruments, tune them to match the organ, because the organ's going to be kind of sharp compared to their instruments. So the total cost of that deconstruction would be about $5,000. The additional construction back in is about $15,000. If anybody viewing this wants to participate in that, you can contact me and we'll get your name. But that will happen at some time in the future because there's more pressing needs in the building right now. Now we're in the balcony now in the blue room, and we're looking right across at the organ console where the organist would play. It has two manuals. A manual is a row of keys and all the stops and everything. And then the pipe box is up here, and again, it's on the outside just decorative. The real works are inside and kind of dark, so it's hard to photograph them. But the blower in the attic blows the air in through the pipes. It would be controlled by the console. Underneath the floor are all the connections between the valves and the pipes and the organ console, so the organist would turn on the blower in the white box, and there you go. Now the other things there, you see the white openings behind the chair. The tall one is the stairway to the Masonic Club, and that's how a member could leave a degree going on in the blue room and not have to do the door knock that we showed you at the beginning of this recording. The low square is the vent that opens up into the red room, so the organist could pull that open and hear what was being done in the red room, so he could play the organ here and they would hear it there. And then the other box that's up above just contains the switch that turns on the blower. Okay, this is the red room. As you can see from the color, it's distinctly different than the blue room, but it also had a stage with a Masonic symbol on it, kind of an engineering type thing on the background. And it can also be used for ceremonies. Frequently what would happen is there were different lodges. They may have something going in this room, while the blue room, which is right next to us, that we showed you earlier, also had something going. So there could be simultaneous things going on in this room, and they actually had them connected up above. There's a hatch here behind where the organist sits, and they would be able to pull that open, and the organist could hear what was going on in this room. The people in this room could hear the organ, and the organist didn't have to be in this room to be participating. So this was a regular lodge, and when the transition was made and the building was being repaired originally, they moved their activities into this room while we were restoring the rest of the building. So that had multiple use, and the Masons have now moved on to that Christian Science reading room building that's on, I think it's on Jackson Street, Jackson 6th. So this was the red room. It was also used for ceremonial purpose. The men were the Masons. The women were the Job's daughters, so young women came up into the Masonic lesson plan, in a sense, as young women as Job's daughters, and Demolay, which was the young men. So Demolay would be meeting upstairs, the Masons would be downstairs, there may be a woman's group in this room, and all those could be doing simultaneous meetings without disturbing the others. So this is the red room. It also has a stage. In the modern world, of what we're doing with the building is, of course, entertainment. And you can see we have now installed sound systems in every room. Here's the one for the red room, so we can now have simultaneous bands playing or entertainment in the different rooms, and we've already done that several times and have plans in the future for more of that. So we're installing the lighting and using this stage. There's a room on the other side of that blue wall, which was kind of like the back stage room, would have rolled lockers and a table, and it kind of becomes the green room for the performance aspect of this facility. But this is the red room. this was kind of the private quarters. I showed you earlier on when we went into the blue room, the door knocker. Well, if you left the room, you came up a secret staircase, and you could leave the degree in the blue room, come up to the Masonic Club and play pool, smoke your cigar, whatever you wanted to do, then go back in the meeting down the staircase, and in a sense, you avoided that door knock and the ritual of entering the room. So the Masonic Club served its purposes, give a break from a Mason who wanted to get out of the degree and to come up here, or just to gather here. So it has this beautiful old Brunswick pool table. We have all the cue balls and the regular balls and the cues and everything, which were kept in a rack on the wall. You can see there was scoring overhead. Those wires were removed because they were so low, but the wire came through here that you would move the little markers to give you your score. The lighting in the building was right at that era when electricity was new, and so it was unreliable. And so it was a gas fixture that could be lit with gas, like the old lamps, but it had the new electric bulbs in it too, so it could be used either way. And because a lot of cigars were smoked up here, there's a vent in the ceiling, and you pull the lever and it opens the vent on the roof. Well, the cigar smoke would go out of the building, and then at the end of the day, they would close the vent again. There's the big circular vent, and it still works. I'm standing right under it, and I can see right up into daylight. So that was the vent for the cigar smoke right here. And the pool table would normally be right under those lights, kind of where the camera is right now. And this room would be part of the lodge, the Masonic Club. And you'll notice the stained glass windows. They're all through this building. These were part of the restoration of the building after the fire. Various families who were Masons bought and put their name at the bottom. So you go through it, you'll see some names that are familiar here in Bay City, and all of them have Masonic symbolism on it. And not being a Mason, I really can't tell you what the symbols are. But here's a window that recognizes the 32nd degree Mason, has a 32 between the twin eagles. The typical eye and the triangle is on one of these, and they all were paid for by the families and part of the restoration. Now, this building originally had copper turrets on the roof, and during the fire, those all melted down, and they took some of the copper and reused it as coinage. Souvenir coin, and the word was that what we thought originally was these coins were sold to raise money also, like the stained glass windows, for the restoration after the fire. But we found out later that when the building was rededicated, as many as 10,000 Masons attended the rededication of the building after the fire, and they were all given a coin as a souvenir. And you see those all through town in estate sales and rummage sales and antique stores. You'll find that little coin that says, you know, Masonic Temple of Bay City, Michigan on one side, and shows the exterior of this building. This is a unique building because there were only a couple of Masonic lodges that had this Moorish architecture to them. And on the outside, the terracotta tiles on the walls, these onion turret domes on the ceiling, even the wooden tops of the staircase banisters all had this kind of Moorish theme. And that was because at that time, as a population, we were really interested in the exotic. So Egypt, we had the Aztec State Theater, same thing. It was exotic, and that's the way they built the buildings, including this one. I think this is a real significant part of the building. It's the only representative of the representation of the Knights Templar, which is where the Masonic Order started. The Knights Templar were after the last crusade. There were only a few of these monk knights recognized by both the Pope and the King, and their job was, after the crusade, protect the pilgrimage of people walking from Europe down to Jerusalem. And they eventually grew to be thousands of Knights Templar and got so powerful because they controlled all the money, that they fell out of favor with the king and the Pope, and were all basically rounded up and executed. The last one to be burned at the stake was Jacques de Molay, and that's why the young men in their education program was called de Molay. It was because Jacques de Molay was the last of the Knights Templar to lose his life when they fell out of favor. And this is the building, this is the window you see from the outside of the building from Madison Avenue when you drive by, because this is situated right above that front entryway door and stairway. This is the top floor, and this is the blue room, we call it. It's kind of got a purple color. This is where I understand most of the women's groups would meet. So Job's daughters, the young women that were in the Masonic program and getting an education, would meet in this room. Now there's a couple things in this room that are different than the other parts of the building. We have a projection area. In the attic, there's a table, and it opens up to this hatch, and that's where a projector could project a movie on a screen in this room. Now, we know that the first movie shown in Bay City was shown in this building. I don't know if it was from this projection booth or if it was down in the blue room, but we have the date that there was a movie shown, and what it was a reenactment of the Charge of the Light of Day from the Crimean War. And it was acted out after the war and shot and made into a little movie. And the first movie to show in Bay City was that movie, and it was shown in this building. So there's a projection booth for the blue room. Now another thing that's in this room is we've over the years used different education programs, many of them from Delta College, on room restoration. And so they've done work downstairs in the blue room and the red room, which we've already seen, but this room is not done yet. So this is kind of left this way because eventually a class will be learning how this restoration works by actually doing the job. You can see this has got some of the worst water damage up toward the top. The roof drains into boxes, and those boxes then have a large drain that runs right down the wall. A pipe that goes all the way down, and that's how rainwater was shed from the roof of this building down through the walls. And those pipes started leaking, of course, over the years, and that's what's happened. Now we've had the pipes relined. We have a new rubber membrane roof on this building. It was one of our first big expenditures, but we had to stop water infiltration into the building, of course. And so that was the damage that was done all the way down from this water. But this is the last place that has to be restored, and it will be at some point in the future. This room also has a very small stage, not a backstage like the other rooms. Doesn't have the flies in it, but was used ceremonially and had a place for people to stand. okay, restrooms, always key to a building, especially when we're bringing the public in, and that's been a priority. So the women's restroom is all modern, has been made into a lounge, and has got modern facilities and stuff, but the men's room hasn't been done yet. This is the way it was with these marble urinal stalls that are very narrow. When a man stood here, you know, a modern man, it's pretty tight. But these will eventually be modernized. We don't know if we'll reconfigure the room and leave these here as a historic artifact or not. That hasn't been decided. But the restrooms are big. The other big thing here, of course, is handicap accessibility. We are not handicap accessible. An elevator will be very expensive. There's a plan for an elevator. That'll happen at some point. But when people come to us and say, hey, we want to hold an event here, we have to tell them, hey, we are not, you know, your grandmother's not going to be able to get up the stairs into the wedding reception, so we don't do that sort of thing in the building at this point. We just can't accommodate all those needs, but we will in the future. Basement level of a historic Masonic building. Big windows that bring in sunlight. This room was used as a dining room. It has tables and chairs, and they would serve meals here. There's a full commercial kitchen on the other side of one of the walls that'll be replaced at one point. But this room saw a lot of activity. It has an interesting element inside with a mystery attached to it, and that's the fabulous back bar from some establishment here in Bay City that's been installed in the area. So this is the back bar. It doesn't have the bar that was here where, you know, drinks would be served, but it's the back bar with drawers and storage and this giant mirror. The mystery is we have no idea where this came from. It was not part of the original building. It was added sometime probably early in the 1900s. And we've been told that it came from the old Republic Hotel, and we've been told other establishments in Bay City where supposedly it been from. But really, I think no one knows exactly where this beautiful bar came from. And it comes apart, it goes into pieces. So it could have been brought in the building and reassembled here with this top piece and the mirrors on each side, the columns, the drawers at the bottom, and the cabinets. Served them a great purpose, but it was brought from somewhere else in Bay City, installed in this room. We just don't know where it originally came from. This is the commercial kitchen that was attached to the dining room we just looked at. It will be completely gutted and replaced because it hasn't been used in years, and already a lot of equipment has been removed from the building. But it had, you know, an industrial-sized coffee maker and big ovens, big stoves. But we'll need modern stuff, and we've already started that process with, let me brag here a bit about this beautiful refrigerator. We've just added this here this week when we record this, and it's because we're going to have school kids in the building for a summer camp this summer, and we're going to serve them lunch, and we have to have not just a regular standard kitchen refrigerator, but a nice commercial one, so food safety and all that for the lunches that will be served to these young people this summer as a magic camp. So this is the first modern piece of equipment, but everything else you see in here will probably at some point have to be removed and replaced. We've talked about things in this community like having a culinary program where, you know how it is, you go to some communities and they have, as a tourist, you sign up and you work with a chef, and by the end of the day you know how to make some fabulous dish, and you have a meal together, and that's part of their tourist industry. We could see that being done in this building and in this room. but a lot of restoration needs to be done to it, and modernization of the kitchen equipment. And right attached to this room is our boiler room, and the boiler there is modern, and no real money is needed to be spent there. It's kind of interesting when you get in there. You could tell they used it for coal at one time to heat this building, as all of Bay City was used, and the boiler was replaced or came in, and that's been replaced with a modern boiler. When you come in the 6th Street door and come downstairs, this is where you end up. And it's kind of like the original basement because the walls were never done here. So we've got brick on the one wall, construction brick, and it comes around here. We've got these big blocks of facing stone right here. These walls are about 33 inches thick. That's a pretty thick wall. And that's the original constructed wall. This facing block is only about 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick, and it's in front, spaced here about 2 inches out from the construction walls. So there's separate walls, although when you first see that, you think that's the wall supporting the building. This is the brick wall. And look at these blocks. These were all rough-hewn stones that were all laid in here. The exterior stone is Jacobean red stone. I've also heard it called Jacobean brownstone. It came from the historic Jacobean mine that was in the Upper Peninsula. That mine is now a historic site, but that red stone on the outside facing of the building is the same stone that was used in several buildings at Northern Michigan University and other colleges and institutional buildings that needed the big red stone that was easily carved, and that's on the exterior of this building. CJ, that's a tour of the Masonic building here in Bay City. It's a great asset. So many people drive by it and never get a chance to see the inside of the building.
We hope that our video showcases the building in its current light and gives potential donors a chance to see what their donations will go towards in the near future.
Yeah, we want to thank all the people that have donated so far. And you can keep track of the events that we have here, open houses, monster movies, concerts, different events that are all held here. You can find those on our Facebook page, Friends of the Historic Masonic Temple in Bay City. And we also have a Facebook page for the monster movies and a website. And we always, you can even sign up for our newsletter and you'll know what's happening in this beautiful building because we're doing this because it belongs to you.
All right, thank you again, Eric. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for your interest in the building.
Thank you.